Good morning. Welcome to the Arts Council of Hillsborough County's Community Arts Impact Grant Workshop. We're very glad to have you with us this morning. I'm Martine Collier, the Executive Director of the Arts Council, and also on the call we have Eileen Blake, who is our Communications and Strategic Initiatives Coordinator. And so Eileen and I will be the two people you need to reach out to if you have any problems during the grant application process. So first of all, just some general information about overall the Community Arts Impact Grant. We have the nonprofit Community Arts Impact Grant and also colleges and universities. The Community Arts Impact Grant was actually formulated in 2018. It's relatively new, and the first grant year was 2019. So we've had 3 years of the program at this point. The county asked us to put together this grant because the strategic plan that we did in 2017 through 2020 emphasized cultural equity, and they wanted a grant that also emphasized access and outreach to the community, and that was accessible to smaller, more emerging organizations. So that's the original origins of it. And in 2020, the Arts Council completed a new strategic plan with a really increasing focus on access. So if you've been applying for this grant in the past, you're going to see some changes in the rubric and the scoring, and we put most of the emphasis on access and community engagement. The next category is artistic and cultural vibrancy, and the final category is organizational capacity. So we are going to be doing a PowerPoint talking about this grant, but I want to encourage you all, this is not everything you need to know. If you go to our website, you can find the grant guidelines, which explain more thoroughly what this grant is seeking to achieve. The scoring rubric, which this is how the panelists score your grant. So I encourage you to look at that as you're writing your grant. A sample application, in case you'd like to see what the questions are before you go onto the online grant system, and also frequently asked questions. I will tell you that one of the changes this year was established in 2019, the first year of the program. The first year, the minimum score for funding was to be 70, and after 3 years, it went to 75. So this is the fourth year. So 75 is the minimum for scoring. But again, if you read the guidelines, if you follow our tips, if you look at the rubric, that should, I'm sure that won't be a problem, but we did want to let you know that as well. So Eileen, if you will start the PowerPoint, we'll just go through that very quickly and get to any questions and answers that the attendees may have. So during this workshop, we're going to cover both the nonprofit Community Arts Impact Grant and the colleges and universities Community Arts Impact Grant. Here are some of the differences for nonprofits and for colleges and universities. Some things are the same. It's a project grant, and it has to be specific arts and cultural centered projects. Also, the grant activities have to be between November 1st, 2021 and August 31st, 2022. And also both programs, as just mentioned, a minimum score of 75 is needed to qualify for funding. There is a match for the Community Arts Impact, but there's no match for the first time, but it increases in percentage the more times you get the grant. There is no match required for the colleges and universities grant. Next slide. This is grant eligibility for both. These grants are funded by the Hillsborough County Board of County Commission. Therefore, you have to be based in Hillsborough County, a 501c3. You cannot receive other funding from the Board of County Commissioners or the Tourist Development Council, excluding capital funds. It is reimbursement based, and if you're an existing Arts Council or prior Arts Council grantee, you have to be in good standing, meaning you have to have completed all the compliance, final reports, and have closed out your other grant appropriately. Next slide. So, as I mentioned, you must achieve a score of at least 75 to be funded. However, a score of 75 does not guarantee funding. The funding decisions are made after the panel meeting. Again, we've made some changes here from previous years. There is a new scoring criteria, and I mentioned these categories earlier, but we also have here the definition of what we mean by access and community engagement and artistic and cultural vibrancy and organizational capacity. I emphasize again to please check out the scoring rubric as you're writing the grant. It will make it much easier for you to achieve the objectives the panel is looking for to give you a higher score. Next slide. So again, this whole program for nonprofits was started to really have a grant available to small, emerging, and or grassroots arts and cultural organizations throughout Hillsborough County. So here are some examples of applicants that were successful applicants and grantees that we've had previously in the 3 years that this grant has existed. It's been a nice cross-section of different kinds of projects, as well as very geographically spread out across the entire county, which, since that was an objective of the program, it's great that that's actually being achieved with our grantees. Next slide. These are just some project examples. Now, this is not meant to be inclusive. You may have a wonderful project idea that's arts and cultural based that doesn't fit in any of these boxes, but we just wanted to give some ideas to sort of trigger your imagination about what might be a suitable project to apply for this funding. Next slide. And these are projects that are not eligible. And this is pretty much across the board, all of the Arts Council grants, not just this one. It has to be open to the general public. It cannot be a capital project, and it can't be for fundraising or to reduce existing deficits. Next slide. So now we're going to talk a little more specifically about the Community Arts Impact Grant colleges and universities. Any department, division of a college or university with administrative offices based in Hillsborough County is eligible. Multiple departments may apply, but only one department, division of the same institution can be funded in a given year. The maximum grant amount is $12,500, but any amount under than that can be, the grant can be submitted for. Again, these are all project support. The focus has to be on the community impact and access, which is what all of Community Arts Impact Grant funding is about. There is, for the colleges and universities component, there is $50,000 allocated. If the number of grantees and the number of requests exceed $50,000, grants will be awarded in the order of the higher scoring to the lower. And if we run out of money, the lower scoring organizations would not receive funds. But we have up to $50,000 to exhaust. Students and faculty are not the focus of this grant, and it's not intended to provide ongoing operational support or administrative overhead. It is really directed to a project of a cultural nature that benefits the community, and the funding request should be related to that project implementation and outcomes. Next slide. Again, this short little PowerPoint and our presentation can't begin to cover everything that's in the guidelines. The guidelines are about 5 pages long. I encourage you to read them before you make application, but I think it will help you in not just in the process of writing your grant application, but in writing a grant application that will be well received by the panel. These are now registering to apply. We're talking about the online grant system at this point. And I'm going to turn it over to Eileen at this point. She's the guru of the online system, not I. So Eileen, why don't you give them some information about this?
Okay. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. This top part here is the link. The link is also on the website should you need it. And you'll do basically everything in this link, from the application to reimbursements to your final report. So probably just bookmark that, save it somewhere. And then there are a few other tips, like you don't want to register multiple times. You want to make sure that somebody is actually monitoring the email that you use to register in the system so that you can appropriately access everything. And probably the biggest one on here is to submit your application early. If you do that, we can kind of glance through. If there's a glaring omission, you don't have budget numbers, something has gone wrong, we can catch that if we see it early. But after the submission deadline, when it's or even if it's like an hour before the submission deadline, we're not going to be able to sit there and go through everybody's information to check on that for you. So this is just a little bit more about like the different stages of the process that you'll see in there, and a couple other tips, which is that you can, when you're working on your application and the other items in the system, if you're not done, you really want to hit save and continue editing. If you hit mark as complete, it means you don't have any other changes. You're done, everything's beautiful, and you want us to see it. And so it's going to move you into another step of the system. So as long as you're still actively editing, you want to hit just the save button, not the mark as complete. And then again, this is just a reminder, the due date is June 18th at 5 p.m. There are no exceptions. If you don't get that grant application in, that's the deadline, and the deadline is the deadline. We talked about this a little bit already, but we did make some changes this year. So we just wanted you to have a couple of examples of some newer questions that are going to be included that match up with that new scoring rubric that Martine has already mentioned. So here are just a couple examples that you can see on the screen. And again, if you have any questions as you're going through things, you don't understand something, you can always reach out to us. Again, this is just a few tips while you're going through this. Make sure that you are directly answering the questions that are asked. Even in the most recent panel review meeting we had where people were reviewing things, this is probably the biggest thing that I heard the panelists saying repeatedly is, that there were problems with applications where people weren't directly answering the questions as they were asked. So just really make sure that you're doing that. And then we also suggest that you work maybe in Word offline and then paste your information into the grant system. Make it easier to spell check. It'll make it easier that if anything should go wrong, you have your work saved. And maybe have somebody proofread or help you look at this for you before you put everything in there and say that it's complete. This is just a little bit information about the uploads. You have to give us the board of directors, but you also have the option to submit some additional support documents. And that's always a great thing for panelists to have, to really get a good sense of what your project is going to be like and what you do, and maybe why they would want to fund you. And you can get up to 3 of those. Commitment letters, again, are also good, but make sure they reference not like hypothetical things, an actual project that you guys have done, or not something that is just sort of vague. So those are just a few tips on commitment letters. And then just a few other tips about formatting when you're copying and pasting things. If you have it in Word and you're putting in the system, make sure like it won't automatically format for you. So make sure that you're formatting it correctly into the system so that it still looks nice. Multiple people can work on the application, but you only have the one login. So just a few tips here. And then some final things, again, please submit your application early. It really gives us a bit of time to give you a hand and to try to help make sure that things are done the way that they need to be. There are some additional resources online, including the scoring rubric that Martine has also mentioned. That is what the panelists use, so it's really valuable to take a look at that as well. And then our email is here. So if you need to get us, you can always email the Arts Council at this address. That's probably the quickest way to get us. And then just another reminder that the application is due on June 18th at 5 p.m. and we won't be taking any applications afterwards.
Okay. Thank you, Eileen.
That is
I would like
it for
I would like to emphasize the applying early. We just never know with technology, with grant systems and things, so please don't wait till the last minute. It's heartbreaking when somebody does that and their internet isn't working or something beyond their control happens, but we have to have a deadline. Regarding the support materials for the application and even commitment letters, if you can tie those into a part of your narrative, whether it's about partnerships or whatever, and even reference in that part of the application that you have included something, that just adds evidence to your case. So mostly you need to know that we're here to support you. We want you to be successful. And Eileen gave you the way to reach out to us if you need help. There is some help on the online grant system, and she mentioned that as well. But please don't sit there and be frustrated. Give us, get in touch with us, and we will be happy to help you. So with all of that said, I think it's good that we now turn it over for your questions. So if anybody has a question, if you would put it in the Q&A box, Eileen's going to be monitoring that, and we'll see about answering those questions as they arise. And if you're interested in seeing the strategic plan, the new Arts Council strategic plan, it is on our website as well. And since it had so much to do with informing the new rubrics and the new grant questions, it might be something that you would like to take a look at. But if you don't want to do that, please look at the scoring rubric, because this will help you. That the panelists are asked to adhere to that scoring rubric, and this is how they will be judging your application. So I encourage you to keep the rubric right beside you while you're writing the application. And I want to also emphasize Eileen's comment about working offline. If you're an experienced grant writer, you probably already do this, but if you're new to the game, this is what you want to do. You don't want to lose information, and that way you can check your word count, you can spell check, you can have it picture perfect before you cut and paste it over into the grant, and you don't run the risk of losing information that you've worked hard on. That has happened to me before, so I speak from experience. Work offline. Do we have a question, Eileen?
We have a question. The question is, Jeanette was wondering if the recording will be available online for later reference.
Yeah.
And yeah, we are recording, yes, so this will go on.
Typically, we get the recording within about 24 hours after the actual meeting. But yes, this is being recorded, so you can refer back to it.
Okay, we just got another one, Martine. It says, I have a cultural project that benefits the community. I am a private studio teacher, not nonprofit, not university or CC, community college. Individual doing business as company, wondering if this grant applies to me. Sorry, I've not completely researched this before the workshop.
You have to be a nonprofit to apply for this grant, but partnerships are certainly allowed. So if you've got a wonderful project of a cultural nature, I would encourage you to think who else could benefit and be a partner on this project and reach out to a nonprofit. That nonprofit would have to make the application because we have to have a EIN number. We have to have be proven nonprofit. But then that could be a partnership that you could work together and actually achieve. And we've seen that happen before, and that's worked well. But the only people that can apply are either nonprofits for the CAIG regular or colleges and universities based in Hillsborough County for the CAIG colleges and universities. Any other questions? Well, if you're feeling shy and you don't want to ask the question on the webinar, feel free to use the contact information that Eileen provided in the PowerPoint and reach out to us. If you're wondering if your project would be eligible, if you would be eligible, we'd be happy to talk to you about that. Another question?
We have one more. It just says, can you explain the reimbursement process of the grant?
Yes, you have to spend the money first and then submit reimbursements to us before we can pay you for what you spent. This is the funding for this comes from Hillsborough County, and these are their rules that the Arts Council has to comply with. So the money, we can't give you the money before you spend it. We can't upfront you the money. You're going to have to document, and by documenting, if you pay someone, you're going to have to show us, the check and the fact that they deposited the check, and there has to be a paper trail for every expenditure in order for the Arts Council to reimburse you according to the county policies that have been established for this.
We have one more question, Martine, which is, are the current questions with their max word counts available online?
Yes.
If you want to answer that, then we have one more after this.
I believe that the sample application, which I mentioned is where the guidelines and the rubric are, you can see the questions, and I believe they also have the word count. So if you wanted to start working on the application before you even signed into the online grant system, you have a sample of what the questions are.
Okay, sorry, we're getting a few more in here. So another one was, if the organization is a first-time grant recipient, there is no match required by the organization, correct?
Correct.
She was asking that.
This is the first time you've applied for Community Arts Impact the first year. If you receive funding, there is no match required.
Somebody is asking if in the additional support materials, if they can include video and still pictures. Do you remember this offhand, Martine? I honestly don't recall if a video is available in that section. I'd have to go check.
I believe that you can include video. I'm not sure about still pictures, but I believe that you can include video. But if let Eileen check this offline, and she will double check to make sure that is the case and get back.
Yeah, honestly, send me an email. I don't have your contact information just readily available, but I can find out exactly what the formats are for you. It's also in the system. You'll see the acceptable formats as you're getting into that section. Oh, somebody copied and found us the answer already. Thank you, Shauna. So optional support material, they include brochures, video, audio, other support material. The URLs must be clickable and not set to private or password protected. Thank you, Shauna. That actually is very helpful. You guys are helping each other find the right answers here. Now, I think there was another, what are the matching requirement brackets for non-first time applicants?
I believe that it goes up the second year, well, the fourth year that you get the grant, it becomes 100%. I think the first year it's nothing, the second year it's 25%, I think, and then the next year is 50%, but that is in the guidelines. Let's see if I'm saying that correct. Yes, no prior CAIG award, no cash match required. One prior CAIG award, 25% cash match required. Two prior CAIG awards, 50% cash match required. Three or more, 100%. So once you get to three or more awards, you will be matching 1-to-1.
Yeah, Shauna had put that in the Q&A panel as well, and yeah, and all of the information is in the guidelines too, so that you can look at that. And I think there was one more question that I saw mixed in here. Somebody was wondering the award maximums as well. So
award maximum.
Mm-hmm.
For CAIG nonprofits, the maximum is $5,000. For colleges and universities is $12,500. Any other questions?
Okay. I think for the moment that we have got them all, unless anybody has any other last questions to drop in here for us.
As I mentioned earlier, if you didn't get to your question, or if you are someone viewing this after the fact, in either case, just reach out to us with your question. And Eileen put that information in the PowerPoint, and just email us, use and we'll be happy to assist you. The application goes live on Monday. But again, if you're just burning with curiosity to see all the new questions, you can look at that sample application that's on the website. But you'll be able to actually start filling out the application on this next Monday. And once you get to that point, let us know if you have any questions that maybe you haven't even thought of at this point. Well, thanks to everyone that attended today. We know we'll have a lot of people watching this after the fact, but we appreciate those that actually attended in person so they could have their questions answered. Again, if anything comes up, you have any other questions about the grant, just let us know. And thank you for your participation today.